Okay, so good morning again. Thank you for being here, and for sure, thanks for having me as well. Just before we start, I'd like to give a quick intro about myself. I'm Mahmoud Atallah. I'm Microsoft MVP working for a company called Passwordless Global, based in UAE. And I've been in the AVD journey from the days of WVD 2019. And that's where I got my first MVP, and then somehow I lost it. I started with AI, and I'm getting back to the AVT part. So this is where I am as of today. Yeah, I've been frequently speaking in different events, starting from GITEX in Dubai, and then ending up here where we are. So yeah, feel free to connect with me if you are not. Most of the people here, I know your faces, but anyway, that's my QR. And our agenda today, it will be mainly security controllers for Azure Virtual Desktop, and behind the scenes, that's actually my course in Udemy. So I do have a course on Udemy about Azure Virtual Desktop, and I thought I just have to combine the whole course. Let's try to get it in 40 minutes. It will be try to be quick ones. So yeah, behind the scenes, we're gonna have a look into the introduction for the architecture of Zero Trust for AVD, shared responsibility, understanding the identity and access management, also how we can control our session, hardening the OS, doing some local group policy configurations, and also data protection and Microsoft Preview, ending up by Defender and Defender for Endpoint. Yeah, so here, thanks for Microsoft ecosystem, you're gonna get Azure Virtual Desktop is not in the picture. However, because of the integration with different protocol and services available in Microsoft, you're gonna get your Azure Virtual Desktop secure by different flavor. So because it's already integrated with Entra ID, you're gonna get your identity secure, where we're gonna apply multi-factor authentication, conditional access, you apply certain restrictions. We are getting lots of requirements where we are just looking to restrict our user to log in from a certain location, certain IP, certain conditions. That's where the Entra ID comes in the picture, and then we're gonna explore how we can do that in practical. On the other side, when it comes to the device control and endpoint protection, again, if you have the Defender for Endpoint Protection licensing, you're gonna get the endpoint protection controllers, and then you can apply additional security layer on your device and on the Azure Virtual Desktop as well. Reverse connect on the Azure Virtual Desktop networking, that was a key add-on to Azure Virtual Desktop, to be honest, and that was like helping us literally to move most of our customers from RDS to Azure Virtual Desktop, because simply they will not be requiring to have any inbound port or protocol open to your network. It's just working with the reverse connect. And then behind the scenes, when it comes to the shared responsibility, Microsoft infrastructure itself, it does have lots of compliance certification. So if you have a certain compliance requirement in your region, that's where you can apply your compliance requirement, or you benefit from the compliance requirement on the infrastructure. And that's where also the infrastructure security hardware can be, you can get the benefit from Microsoft. On the other side, when it comes to the data protection, we are getting lots of requirements where you can have data encryption at rest and data encryption in transit as well. Both of them can be achieved with Azure Key Vault, and also the SSL and HTTPS protocols that are available on the Azure Virtual Desktop. And last but not least, the SIEM solution, which is Azure Sentinel, is being provided from Microsoft. So the whole ecosystem can benefit your Azure Virtual Desktop. However, all of them are totally away from the technology itself. Like, they are just add-on for your virtual desktop. Okay, back to the identity. Now, if we need to apply a certain controller, we need to think about multi-factor authentication. That's basics as of today. Second layer, we can look into the conditional access, and then recently we start looking into the passwordless, where we are introducing FIDO as well. And that's, to be honest, it was like additional added value. With Windows 365 and Windows Hello, the single sign-on became like very well known. And then we're gonna explore also how you can plan for your RBAC strategy for your Azure Virtual Desktop, understanding the different RBAC protocol and understanding different layers, who should have what, and based on that you can apply your controllers. And again, when it comes to the PowerShell scripting, you can apply a certain automation for the RBAC, and that's like behind the scenes. Many of our colleagues start automating the deployment of Azure Virtual Desktop using the Terraform and then adding some flavor of the PowerShell as an additional function to automate the identity control part. When it comes to the OS hardening and session control, you need to think about watermarking. It's really good add-on to Azure Virtual Desktop. Myself, I had a customer requirement where you have to limit the developer from taking the code out of the Azure Virtual Desktop. And then we applied certain controller that they will not be able to copy and paste this data out of the Azure Virtual Desktop, but still he can take a screenshot or a snippet from a certain part of the code, where the watermark and the screen protection added lots of value. So first of all, if I just need the screen protection, if he taking a screen, it's gonna be black. He will not be able to take any data out of this. On the other side, if you still don't need to restrict that level, but you need a watermark, so if he's taking a screenshot, his information is already being labeled on the document itself, so that's also a flag. That's where the watermark comes into the picture. So this is really interesting one when it comes to the session control. And then when it comes to the encryption, we're gonna explore again how we can apply the Azure Key Vault on the disk encryption. RDP properties, to be honest, most of us are just using the default ones. As our colleague today highlighted, we're gonna get it to the reset to default and just consume it as it is. However, RDP properties, it does have lots of functions that we really need to think about when we are consuming it. When it comes to group policy, yeah, if you're still using the hybrid identity and you are dependent on domain controller, you need to think about screen lock, time session, and many configuration when it comes to that. Compliance. I highlighted the compliance requirement. However, in Dubai, we do have Dubai electric security compliance requirement, and that's already available for us in Azure environment. So as part of our delivery solution to Microsoft, to customers that using Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, we are already compliant using the services. So that means that compliance standard, yeah, there are many others, but that's the one that we are literally consuming. And on the other side, many compliance requirements that comes into the level of encryption and also data loss protection, where Microsoft preview come in the picture, and also information protection and data classification. I'll just skip that one. I'll directly jump into the technical part. So now let's check out where we can configure the RBAC protocol for our resources. Basics. Whenever we are looking for access control for our resources on Azure, it is just a couple of clicks to understand that interface. So I'm just jumping into the Azure portal. By the way, why I'm directly taking screenshot instead of jumping into portal and taking action, because behind the scenes, literally it's 100 slides. So if I will go manually for every slide to go through the portal, it will take time. So I thought I'll directly take it that way. So it's literally just jumping into the IAM or the access control, understanding every single rule, and based on the rule itself, I have to assign the protocol. Usually we go with owner, contributor, giving everyone full access, and that's a default behavior, but that shouldn't be the practice when it comes to security guru managing Azure Virtual Desktop. So you have to understand, and that's why I'm flagging one of the key ones. Usually we have virtual machine login and virtual machine administrator login. And it's a key difference. If you're just adding him to that, he's local admin, he can disturb your business. He gonna literally impact all the other users on the VM itself, because he can install something or uninstall something, which is the rest of the team on the same VM will be affected. On the other side, you can just get a default access control, or depending on your virtual desktop management, you can provide different access. So RBAC is key indicator here. And here I'm highlighting some description for key RBAC users options, where if you just are part of the help desk, you can be on the operator. If you are just maintaining the pool, you can be part of the contributor. And again, depend on your role, you have to define your access control. Multi-factor authentication. There is lots of problem when it comes to multi-factor authentication. Azure Virtual Desktop, when it came to the world, once you apply multi-factor authentication, is not working. And that's simply because there is two layers of authentication. The first authentication is happening on the Entra ID, and then the second authentication is happening on the session host itself. And that level of authentication, when it comes to the Azure Virtual Desktop, you have to understand where the authentication come, which area I have to apply the authentication, or I have to apply my multi-factor authentication layer, and which area I have to exclude. Because multi-factor authentication or not working on the legacy protocols and will not be applicable on the session host itself. So you have to apply it on the Azure Virtual Desktop app registration, which is, I highlighted the name here and I highlighted the ID, and you have to exclude the session host itself, so it will be function as it is. And the default security, multi-factor authentication that come by default from the Entra ID, that will restrict your AVD and your AVD will not work. So you have to go through the conditional access scenario, unless there is a change. There is a change here? I'm just asking the guru as well, because one of the gurus are here. Yeah, so that's literally how you can configure your multi-factor authentication. You're just creating a conditional access. You define your role, your users and group, and then when it comes to the cloud apps, you just define one of the cloud apps, so you are directly targeting Azure Virtual Desktop. That means behind the scenes, you are not impacting the session host controller.
And there are different apps for like Windows 365.
Yes, so back days.
The Windows app, right?
Yes, great. So that's a key point as well, as you highlighted when it comes to the Windows sign-in login. That's one of the apps that it has to be excluded because this will be impacted by the multi-factor authentication. However, the Azure Virtual Desktop, because it's app registration part of the Entra ID app, or I would say the authentication layer of the Azure Virtual Desktop that interact with the RD gateway, this is where the authentication will function. So as the gentleman highlighted, yeah, we need to think about the apps and we understand which app will be required to have the multi-factor authentication and which app has to be excluded as well. Okay, and when it comes to the condition, yeah, I don't have here the screenshot, I think, of the condition, but here you can apply different condition layers. So let's say the session host itself will be applicable to run only 3 hours. So after the 3 hours, it will be impacted. On the other side, I can apply it. He would be able, like I remember back days, I do have a customer that their team is working from India and they are based in Italy. So the Azure Virtual Desktop, we configured it in India to be close to them and to function. But on the other side, we configured the public IP for the outgoing to be Italy to be represented as Italy IP. So they are compliant somehow. So that kind of condition also, you have to apply it to make sure that the AVD hosted coming out from the same network configuration. Okay, single sign-on and passwordless. That's, at that time, that screenshot. So it was in preview at that time, and there was lots of requirement to configure the single sign-on at that time. So first of all, you have to go with Windows 11 version 22 H and above. Right now we do have 24, so that was one of the prerequisites for single sign-on. And on the other side, you have to configure the authentication on the portal itself. So on the authentication of the portal, you have to enable the RDP to attempt on the Azure AD authentication sign-in, so you allow your authentication to integrate and attempt, to be redirected through the Azure AD authentication. And then the last one, just to validate, like here, once we configure that, if you go for the custom interface, which is the advanced, you're gonna see that it's enabled or added additional protocol. So for me, to be honest, that's my area usually. I just usually copy that and save it as my version control. That's where I stand as of today. Whenever I do have a change, that's exactly all the actions that are being configured on all the tabs. So I do have here my like every time I do deploy different customer, I just go for my previous customer, taking that controllers, pasted there. They do have the same configuration. It's function as it is.
Is that now just a tick box? Like the single sign-on is just a tick box?
Yeah, again, all of them, if you're just getting back to the tab itself, it is available as an option, right? But once you configure the option, it will reflect on the advanced. So it's better for me as, like, again, a scripting concept, automation concept, making everything it's all in one. It would be better for me to have a snippet for that and directly replicate it across customers. That's my goal, I would say, behind the scenes. Yeah. So by the way, I started my Windows Virtual Desktop 2019, and at that time I lost my job. So I populated like a Upwork profile that I'm doing Azure Virtual Desktop deployment and those kind of things. And from 2019 till 2021 Jan, I delivered the 25 project through Upwork. So it was for me a repetitive task, literally repetitive task. Just copy and paste, and that's why I'm saying the guru is here, because I used to use his scripts, I used to use the automation part, because when it comes to the portal, it's nice to do it, but lots of time to consume as well. So the automation is nice too. Yeah, once you configure the single sign-on, the first time you're gonna get this interface to allow your application to authenticate and connect, meaning that you're gonna be the single sign-on behavior, or the single sign-on behavior will be act going forward, and once you allow it, you are there. So, yeah, I'll just go for the next. Yeah. Okay, great. So we had a discussion today morning, I think, about that point you already highlighted. So I remember back days, I used to crash it, and I just reset it to the default. So that was my default behavior. But the key question, which is I was planning to ask, but because of the time I didn't ask actually, is once I reset to the default, you mentioned that it's gonna be fully reset to the default, right? If I need to reset to the default settings, that it should be function. That's like allowing X and 2 and Y, because that should be the default behavior. That was my question. So we may need to discuss that later on, in case if you have understood that.
No, so we're going to define what the defaults are.
That was my exactly. That's why, because if it's gonna be just at the default, I think that for me it was easy to reset the default. It's gonna work.
Yeah.
You
Well, the point is we've defined what the defaults are
Yes.
previously,
Yes.
and they've been redirect drives because the PM at the time assumed that everyone wants to redirect drives. Until such time as people recognise that actually we shouldn't be doing that. We should allow the customer to go and make that decision themselves.
Interesting.
So we're
Yeah.
going to default to everything off, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, default off, it's fine, but default off, I said it's default like it's all not configured.
Correct.
Yeah, I see.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's two different things. Not configured and turned off are two different things, aren't they? So not configured just means that you've not applied the setting, whereas
Exactly. So that's what I thought, but the gentleman highlighted, no, it's gonna be off. So
So it won't be not configured, it will be off.
uh,
So for example, the clipboard redirection will not be available.
no, but keep in mind that sometimes not configured, meaning that if it's there, it's gonna function. Let's say you do have a group policy that it does redirect by itself, so it's gonna function. So that was my question. So it's like you are overwriting, like the gap, because
Okay, I guess the question for Tom is like, if it's not configured today, and that not configured means it's default and it's on, when you change the defaults, will that change the behavior if it's not configured? Or will you have to...
yeah, see, that's what my
So if
confusion.
not configured is insecure today, and it's enabled, you go and change the defaults to say actually that the new not configured is now secure. Will you change everyone's existing configuration?
So, no, so not if you've got a set of configurations already, this will be for new hosts.
So it's only applies to new host pods, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not configured and enabled now, it will remain enabled, correct? Not configured.
No, but again, I got confused here, to be honest. If I reset, it will not override? Because I reset it to not configure, it should override. It should override whatever it exists.
Well, so if you're resetting,
Yeah,
then it will be override.
yeah, that's exactly what
We're not gonna. If you've got a configuration, we're not touching your existing configuration. So new host pools and the reset, which is
the reset. Yeah, my target was reset because I used to configure, play a lot. It's not working, so I need to get everything to function as it is. So reset was my target. That was it.
So if a new host pool has everything turned off, that would all be in that screenshot there. That would all be disabled. That's new.
Back days it was not.
Easy target, right? So it's all disabled, right? So is not configured then going to be an option?
You see, that's a strange thing. Why do I have three options?
I don't know, guys. Let's skip that.
This is my question. Like, I can understand that a new environment would be disabled and that you might want to turn it on. But why is not configured then? Or in the future, is there not going to be a not configured?
No, but keep in mind that not configured is not only for security controllers. Like we were discussing something else right now, like single sign-on.
But at
So-
different levels. So if I do a setting with a group policy that is one level, and if I have not configured, then it will not change. But if I enable or disable, it will override the settings from the machine.
Exactly. The group policy back days, you do have not configured, and then you can go for enable, disable.
Yeah, it's resulting settings.
Yes.
Adding everything up
Yes.
together.
Yeah. You just restricted the policy itself. Yeah, that's the point.
But I'll go back to my original question. If it's already disabled by default, you can't then not have not configured because you've already set a state and the state is disabled. There
Yeah.
can't then be a not
Andy,
configured.
then it will change it because it's not configured.
Exactly.
If it's being overridden somewhere,
It can start as disabled, right? And actually say, now I want to control this by group policy. So you can then say, I don't want to configure it here, I'm going to control it in group policy. Or I might want to configure it here and enable it here. So it is a valid state, depending on where you want the configuration to apply.
So not configured here means
Looks like I introduced the big.
it's configured elsewhere.
could be
Well, it can be.
configured. Can be
It
configured.
can be configured elsewhere.
Yeah.
Did you never do
Not
group
configured at
policy?
all.
I do very This is why I'm asking. I'm asking now.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the group policy as well because I have few of them. Anyway, I was explaining few of them because it's required, and one of them was, to be honest, the clipboard redirection, which is we usually keep it to the default, and the people are able to take the data out and in, and that's by default. It shouldn't be there. You should be restricting the data. If you have a virtual desktop to secure your data, meaning that should be configured from day one. Same apply for the device and print redirection. That shouldn't be default as redirect. Whenever you are getting in, you directly taking your disk within the AVD itself, you're still able to copy everything from the AVD, taking it out to your disk. That's also shouldn't be there. USB and smart card and safe credential. So I just highlighted few of them just for the sake of time. I'll skip. Now coming to the group policy. Yeah, that's your point. By default, all are not configured. Yeah, so as a practice, to be honest, most of my time I used to consider the session time limit, not for the sake of security, however, it's a sake for the cost itself. Whenever we do have the scaling up, scaling down, you need to consider that this user, if he's not active for like a couple of hours on the device itself, and the device doesn't have any other user, so this disconnected session has to be signed out, and this VM itself has to be deallocated. And that's where the scaling consideration comes into the picture. And that's one of the group policies that has to be configured. Second group policy, which is the screensaver. I know we are not really using it as of today, but screensaver, it comes with additional function, which is looking the system itself. So once you configure the screensaver, you configure with the screensaver the password of the screensaver protection. So at that time, your screensaver will run, and then the screen will be protected, so the people will not be able to unlock the device. We do have a default behavior for most of the users that they are directly jumping into the VM working, and if they get to chat with someone, they leave the device and go. And that's where the screensaver comes in the picture, looking the screen. Anyone else will not be able to unlock the device because the password has been there. Idle configurations. So this is just a screenshot showing the idle configuration, how you can configure it once you have the disconnected session configured, and then you're gonna have the idle configuration as well being set up. So as a result of this, you're gonna set the last one, which is force the sign off. So you have disconnected and then idle and then totally sign off of the system itself. Okay, which is end the session that reached to the limit. So once you reach to, let's say, 2 hours of disconnected and you're not consuming that, terminate that session and allow this pool to free up the resources. Now coming to the disk encryption, we highlighted at the beginning, there is key requirement to apply the disk encryption, data encryption at rest, and that's where the key vault come in the picture. So behind the scenes, I'm just directly key the key point. So the disk, which does have the data or the operating system, I will just create a key vault. That key vault will be in my region. I will configure my standard pricing, and then I will enable the access for my Azure resources to access the key vault itself, because keep in mind that there are two different access control you can configure for the key vault. There is the access configuration that was the only available option back days on the key vault, and Microsoft introduced the key vault access RBAC control, which is IAM, that you can get both of them. So if we are going through the access control, that's the way where you allow your Azure resources to access your disk encryption and then consume this key to encrypt your disk. And that was also one of the configuration. And behind the scenes, I will create a disk. I created the key vault, and then I have to create the key. So I'll jump in again to the Azure portal, generate a new key, configure the encryption requirement. Keeping in mind that nowadays it's only working for the Windows operating system 11, 24 each. It's only working with 4096. And yeah, back to the portal, you jump into the VM, and then from the VM itself, you're looking into the disks, and then you're looking into the additional settings of the disk, and you just attach the operating system to the key vault and the key. And once you do that, the VM will be configured with the data encryption at rest on your disk. And you're gonna see here that now it's a server-side encryption with primary managed key. A platform managed key. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Now, when it comes to the screen capture protection, so that should be the behavior when a user trying to take a screenshot of a virtual desktop. You're gonna see, let's say, this is the actual virtual desktop. This is my remote application, and then I'm trying to take a step from this area. Actually, this area should be visible. This area shouldn't be, but yeah, maybe the screen. So here, that area will be totally blocked. The screenshot will not be able to capture any information, and the other side will be function. And in order to configure the screen protection, that will be the required steps. I just highlighted all of them as sequence. You just need to download the group policy of the Azure Virtual Desktop to allow your ADMX to have the configuration required for your Azure Virtual Desktop. Once you download it, you have to copy the configuration file, which is the ADMX and the ADML, to the direct folder. For sure, the folder definitions are here. And then once you copy them, you open the Azure Virtual, you open the group policy, you will be able to see a new tab under the remote session host called Azure Virtual Desktop. Once you have it, you will have the option to enable the screen protection. And once it's been configured, it's gonna be directly reflected on your system. Any question on that? Because this is a group policy, it's totally out of the Azure configuration. It's local on the system. It's only working with local system. Keep in mind that you can do that as well on the local system if you don't have a domain controller, because I defined it here on the screen, on the brief screen, like you are configuring it against your domain share. However, you can again have it on the normal Windows local system. Okay, some network security configuration for your Azure Virtual Desktop you have to consider. This is just like a practice. I thought of introducing this practice. By default, the Azure Virtual Desktop VM does have a normal network security group. And the normal default security group, it does have allow for everything out, allow for everything in internet only, which is the OR443 and the default ports. So what we thought, instead of having the default access control, let's restrict everything on that virtual machine, just allow what you need for your end user, meaning that, okay, in order for my Azure Virtual Desktop to work, you would require outbound for 443 for all of my Azure services, and there is IP list and lots of, I would say, list of the domain names related to Azure services available that you can define it in your NSZ. On the other side, if you are having Azure Firewall, it is already does have a tag that you can tag it based on your services, and then you can allow the traffic. On the other side, For the passion and the management, in case if you have additional services within your environment and you need to manage the RDP, you would require the 3389 because we restricted everything that will be required. And again, for the Windows update, you would require the Windows update configuration. Same apply for the file share. In order for your some services to work related to, let's say, file share and the printer, you would require those protocols and those IPs. That's why you need to think about having them. Same apply if you are having browsing or you are managing any Linux workload, you would require 22 as well. Here I'm trying to highlight that, okay, I will configure the Azure Virtual Desktop with Azure Firewall, and behind the scenes I will create a new subnet for the Azure Firewall for Azure Firewall requirement configurations, and then I will create also the management subnet for the Azure Firewall. Both of them is being configured. Now it's time to configure the firewall itself. Again, creating a firewall, just doing the default policy, and then here you're gonna see that whatever I discussed on the previous screens, those are the ones that I will start allowing as well. So for the domain controller to retrieve the DNS and to query any DNS protocol, you would require the 53, and that's your destination for the domain. Here I'm allowing the same the range between the two subnets that are on my VNet. So even I'm not allowing the full VNet, I'm just allowing my subnet targets. And again, for the Windows activation, I'm allowing the KMS. So whenever the KMS requiring certain activation would be able to authenticate with the domain, and the domain will be retrieving this information and taking it back. Additional configuration here when it comes to the application rule. So on the previous screen, we highlighted network rule. Now, my network is allowing for 53 for the DNS and KMS. However, sometimes the VM itself requiring update. The update is being treated as an application layer. And when it comes to the application layer on the Azure Firewall, there is a tag. So you don't have to really define where is the server that hosting the Windows updates. It will be easy for me to just define the tag on the application firewall on the on the Azure Firewall. And then there is also a tag for the Windows Virtual Desktop. So in case of the RD Gateway, the connection broker, any of those services does have a problem, that will be the limitation over here if you didn't configure that well on the Azure Firewall, because this is the requirement for the Azure Firewall to work. Okay, so now I'm just again showing the association of I created the firewall, I created the Azure Virtual Desktop, but both of them is still isolated. I need this to function. So the only step would be required is to associate the route table with the subnet, meaning that for this subnet to be redirected to the firewall, I just need additional configuration step, which is I will route the old traffic coming out from the Azure Virtual Desktop to the Azure Firewall, and then from Azure Firewall to the internet. For this to function, it is route table, subnet, association, looking into the AVD subnet, Azure AVD virtual network, and then looking into the subnet itself. Once I have done that, my firewall will function and my business will be interrupted. So that's how it is. Yeah, that's a default behavior for usually when you are configuring the firewall at the first day, it's not really function as expected, and that's where you're gonna look into the missing rules, missing configuration, and you need to add it back. Unfortunately, on the Azure Firewall, we don't have the learning layer like other third-party firewalls. We do have the learning, I would say, time frame where you just enable the learning time. The firewall will understand the communication and then will take it to the next step as add-on. But on the firewall, on Azure Firewall, you have to do it manually. Okay, we added our routes. We configured the destination and the route itself. We configured the destination and the source where we're gonna configure all the requirement. And then here we are looking into the best practices on how you can protect your network. Additional requirement or additional benefit that you can add to your Azure Virtual Desktop is just-in-time access. So I'm not saying just-in-time access to be on the Azure Virtual Desktop host session itself, but as an admin, because you do have a privileged access and you're doing lots of actions, with the concept of just-in-time access, you don't have the default behavior to access with full privilege without taking the stage of approval or procedures. And that's where the just-in-time access comes in the picture. This is just like highlighting the prerequisites, the supportability, and the required rule. And then behind the scenes, you are requiring those configurations to be enabled in your Azure Virtual Desktop to allow your just-in-time access to work. So behind the scenes, what will be the configuration? You just jump into the Azure portal. Again, Defender for Cloud, protected rules, just-in-time access, and then you enable just-in-time access on the certain host or VM that you need to configure. Once you enable it, the next slide is not there, but once you enable it, let's consider that I will log into this. I think maybe it's available here as well, because I do have just-in-time access and Passion. So maybe as an admin, you would be requiring to access the Azure Virtual Desktop through a Passion. Are you aware about Passion? Okay, so just for the folks that don't know, Passion, so Azure Virtual Desktop allow the end user to access with the reverse connect protocol and doing this function using a client desktop application, and also some of them are web. But Azure Passion is allowing you to access the full Azure VM workload without having any inbound requirement or even client server application. So it's just within the portal itself, you are accessing the VM, and from the VM, Passion, and then from the Passion, you just feed the credential. It works for Linux and Windows, and that's the protocols required. So back to the Passion configuration. Now I configured the default configuration of Passion, and you do have it. These are the prerequisites for your Passion. Now I need to RDP. That's exactly what I was talking about. So I need to RDP to the domain controller of the VM, and instead of the RDP directly to the VM, I can take it to the level of Passion. And because I have the Passion configured with just-in-time access, you're gonna get a flag that just-in-time access is configured on that VM. You will not be able to connect until you request for a period that will allow you to work on this VM for a certain time. So you request you're gonna jump into the just-in-time access request. It's exactly on the same portal, but I'm just focusing on it. You request, there is different request requirement. You can configure it on my public IP, you can configure it on a certain IP, or you can just request it for all the configured IP on that just-in-time access configuration itself. Once you do the request, you will be eligible to access for the certain time that is being configured, and then you just have to feed your credential and you would be able to access. If you are looking into, in order to check the activity log, you just have to get back to the Defender for Cloud, just-in-time access, the VM, and then under the VM activity log, you would be able to see all the people that jump into this VM in that time and that request. Okay, governance. So behind the scenes, few times we are getting a request for people to, I'll show you something. So most of our, customers does have the owners or does have a right permission privilege, but they don't have a default behavior of multi-factor authentication is being enabled. So as a key requirement for them to work is, okay, I will have an Azure policy. That Azure policy will apply the multi-factor authentication. By default, I will create a remediation rule, and that remediation rule will be using my managed identity. Whenever I'm getting any right access on my subscription, directly restrict that account and apply multi-factor authentication. So in the next time they are jumping into the VM, you are making sure that none of your people are having right access to your environment, does have access without being asked for multi-factor authentication. So instead of asking them to enable the multi-factor authentication, you are forcing it, but from different layers. Some more practices and compliance, I'll just skip because we still have more slides. When it comes to the Defender for Cloud, that's what you cover end to end, but our aim is to manage the Defender for servers, which is the VMs itself behind the scenes. So you just have to, again, back to the Defender for Cloud, Defender plan, enable. You can enable or you can directly enable it only on the server based on your target, and the pricing will be based on the plan that you enable as well. Okay, once you enable it, by the way, this is one of like, I would say, key selling point. Like our business, what we do, by the way, we are sending the customer a monthly report of their secure score. And every month we are increasing their secure score by certain %. That shows our managed service profile benefit. Like we as a partner, what we deliver for our customer, we are trying to make sure that you are not in that level. Let's say, as of today, the customer is 75%. So I'm looking on a daily basis, what are the requirement or prerequisite for this customer to go beyond this secure score, and based on that, I'm looking for the unhealthy resources, and then I'm providing them with the additional recommendation, taking their approval and taking actions. So a key requirement to manage your Azure Virtual Desktop environment is to look into your secure score and looking for the unhealthy resources. Whenever you are jumping into the unhealthy resources, you're gonna see that, okay, I can see that my system is not being updated at all, and that's why I don't have any secure being added on that. And whenever I'm adding this, I'm increasing my secure score by 11%. Again, assignment, I have to take the assignment, I have to take action, and once I improve it, that's where I add a lot of value. Okay, I highlighted at the beginning the watermark, so that's exactly how the watermark looks like. Whenever you are enabling the watermark on the Azure Virtual Desktop, it generates a QR, and that QR, it does have your identity session information. And whenever whenever as an admin, I would be able to take information from that QR, feeding it to the log analytics workplace. You query your identity information, I will be able to query your exact session and when that action being taken. Because every time it creates a user session, it creates a unified ID for you. So I can consume this for tracking the screenshot. Does have different prerequisites. So those are the prerequisites. I'll be trying to share with you the presentation so you can look at that. And that's it. I hope it was quick and fast. Thank you.